The ash-covered woman stared at the smoldering remains of what had once been her home, her slender fingers clutching a tarnished locket, the only possession she had managed to salvage from the ruins. Chloe Wright had lost everything in a matter of hours, and now she sat motionless on a weathered stump, her tear-streaked face illuminated by the last dying embers of the cabin she had built with her late husband. Wyoming Territory, 1876. The frontier was unforgiving at the best of times, but for a woman alone, it was nothing short of merciless. The afternoon sun beat down on Chloe's back as she contemplated her next move. She had no family left in these parts, no money to speak of, and winter was approaching fast. The distant howl of a wolf only emphasized her isolation as she sat amid the charred timber and broken dreams. She didn't hear the approaching hoofbeats until they were nearly upon her. Startled, Chloe turned to see a tall figure on horseback emerging from the tree line. Her hand instinctively reached for the small knife tucked in her boot, the lone weapon she possessed. The stranger dismounted with fluid grace that spoke of years in the saddle. His weathered face was partially hidden beneath the wide brim of his hat, but she could see kind eyes studying her with concern. The man was dressed in the practical garb of a working cowboy, worn denim, scuffed boots, and a dusty leather vest over a faded blue shirt. "Madam," he said, removing his hat respectfully as he approached, keeping a respectful distance. "I saw the smoke from miles away. Are you hurt?" Chloe shook her head, too numb and exhausted to speak. The cowboy's gaze swept over the destroyed homestead, taking in the magnitude of her loss. "Name's Bennett Sawyer," he said, his voice deep but gentle. "I run cattle on the North Range, was tracking a stray when I spotted the smoke." "Chloe Wright," she finally managed, her voice hoarse from smoke and crying. This was my home." Bennett's expression softened as he looked from the ruins back to her face. "What happened here, if you don't mind my asking?" "Lightning strike," Chloe replied, gesturing weakly toward the sky. "During yesterday's storm. It caught so fast, I barely got out with the clothes on my back." A moment of silence passed between them as Bennett surveyed the damage once more. Then he stepped closer and extended his hand, not to touch her, but as an offering. "Mrs. Wright, you don't have to start over alone," he said simply. The words hung in the air between them, unexpected and powerful. Chloe looked up at him, truly seeing him for the first time, the crow's feet around his eyes that spoke of both hardship and laughter, the strong set of his jaw beneath several days' worth of stubble, and most of all, the genuine compassion in his expression. "I don't accept charity," she said automatically, the stubborn pride that had kept her going after her husband's death reasserting itself. Bennett Sawyer's mouth curved into a small smile. "I'm not offering charity, madam. I'm offering a fair deal. My ranch needs a housekeeper, and I pay honest wages for honest work. You need somewhere to stay until you figure out your next move. Seems straightforward enough to me." Chloe hesitated, clutching the locket tighter. Inside was a small portrait of Thomas, her husband who had succumbed to fever the previous winter. What would he want her to do? "I have a spare room in the main house," Bennett continued. "Clean, private, with a lock on the door. My foreman and 2 ranch hands bunk in the bunkhouse out back. We're simple folk, but decent." The sun was beginning to set, painting the Wyoming sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. The temperature would drop soon, and Chloe had nowhere to go. Her nearest neighbors were the Hendersons, 15 miles east, and she had no horse to get there. "Just until I can make other arrangements," she finally said, rising to her feet with as much dignity as she could muster. Bennett nodded, as if her decision was the most natural thing in the world. "Fair enough." He turned and whistled, and his horse trotted over obediently. "Is there anything here you need to bring?" Chloe looked around at what remained of her life. "Nothing that survived the fire." Bennett nodded again, understanding in his eyes. Then we should get going before dark. The trail gets tricky after sunset. He held the reins of his chestnut gelding. This is Rusty. He's steady as they come. With unexpected gentleness, Bennett helped Chloe onto the horse, then mounted behind her, keeping a respectful distance between them. As they rode away from the smoking ruins, Chloe couldn't help but look back one last time at the place that had been her home for 3 years. A chapter of her life had ended in those flames. What would the next one hold? The ride to Bennett's ranch took nearly an hour, during which neither spoke much. The gentle rhythm of the horse beneath them and the vast openness of the Wyoming landscape offered a strange comfort to Chloe's shattered nerves. As they crested a ridge, Bennett's ranch came into view in the valley below, a modest but well-maintained collection of buildings surrounded by sturdy fencing. "Welcome to Sawyer Ranch," Bennett said as they approached. "It's not much compared to some of the big spreads, but it's mine, free and clear." Chloe could see a main house built of solid logs, a large barn, a bunkhouse, and various other outbuildings. Several corrals contained horses, and in the distance, she could make out cattle grazing on the lush grass. As they rode into the yard, a lantern flared to life on the porch of the main house, and a figure emerged, an older man with a bushy gray beard and a slight limp. "That's Earl Watson, my foreman," Bennett explained. "Been with me since I started this place 7 years ago." "Boss," Earl called out, hobbling down the porch steps. "Was beginning to worry. Found that stray, did you?" His eyes widened slightly when he noticed Chloe. "Earl, this is Mrs. Wright," Bennett said as he dismounted, then helped Chloe down. "Her homestead burned down in yesterday's storm. She'll be staying with us for a while, working as our housekeeper." To his credit, Earl didn't ask questions. He merely tipped his hat to Chloe and said, "Madam, sorry for your troubles. We ain't much for fancy living here, but you're welcome to what we have." "Thank you, Mr. Watson," Chloe replied formally, trying to maintain her composure despite her exhaustion. "Earl, would you see to Rusty?" Bennett asked. "I'll show Mrs. Wright to her room." As Earl led the horse away, Bennett guided Chloe toward the main house. Inside, it was simple, but clean. A large main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a stone fireplace dominating one wall. A hallway led off to what Chloe assumed were bedrooms. "Kitchen's well stocked," Bennett explained, lighting more lamps to dispel the gathering darkness. "Bedroom's down here." He led her to the last door on the right. "Like I said, it has a lock. Used to be my sister's room when she visited before she moved back east." Chloe stepped into the small but comfortable room. A narrow bed with a patchwork quilt, a dresser, and a small table with a basin for washing comprised the furnishings. A window looked out toward the mountains to the west. "There's some of Rebecca's, my sister's, clothes in the dresser," Bennett said from the doorway, not entering the room. "She's about your size, I reckon. Help yourself to whatever fits. Bathroom's out back, I'm afraid, but there's a screen for privacy." Chloe nodded, suddenly overwhelmed by the events of the day and the kindness of this stranger. "Thank you, Mr. Sawyer. This is more than generous." "Bennett," he corrected gently. "Out here, formalities don't last long. You must be hungry. I'll fix something while you get settled." Before she could protest, he had closed the door, leaving her alone with her thoughts. Chloe sank onto the edge of the bed, finally allowing herself a moment to process